Oh, hey! Sorry, I didn't see you there. I was just being peaceful. In today's video, we're going to be exploring the manifestor's signature of peace and the not-self theme of anger and how you can work with the anger in order to get to peace. My name is Karen McMullen, and welcome to this episode of The Empowered Manifestor, where I highlight the stories and perspectives of 5 manifestor women. Before we can even begin to understand peace and anger in the manifestor, we need to go back in history and really look at the mythology of human design and the movement from the 7-centered being to the 9-centered being. So let's go explore that. And now for story time. 1781 and the fairy tale of the manifestor. Long ago, manifestors were the kings and queens who ruled their lands with control, dominance, and power. They held positions of power because of their ability to bring into being what they envisioned, the innate protection of their closed and repelling aura, and because they were pure doers who could conquer and defend kingdoms and maintain their power by establishing laws. They also easily angered when anyone tried to interfere with them. And because they were angry, and anger is an emotion that contains within it an inherent risk of violence, people were afraid and didn't want to rock the boat by challenging their power. In 1781, according to the myth of human design and what Ra the founder heard from the mysterious voice, there was a great change that swept across the planet, and humanity began a shift from being a 7-centered to a 9-centered being. This change coincided with the discovery of Uranus and moved us into the Uranian era. Our bodies began to transform from Saturnian bodies, which lasted roughly about 40 years, to Uranian bodies, which had a much longer lifespan of 84 years on average. If you have no idea what that really means, it's okay, neither do I. You don't have to believe this, just see if it holds value in your own life. The 7-centered world was a strategic thinking world to create winners and losers over time with evolution. In the 7-centered world, decisions were driven by the mind. They were fear-based and focused on survival. The 7-centered world was hallmarked by hierarchical top-down leadership styles and power structures. 1781 marked a great shift, and you can see that within a 20-year span of that time, the American Revolution and the French Revolution happened, and some of these power structures began to be overturned. But that was just the beginning of the process, which is said to continue until 2027. So as we move towards 2027, things are really heating up. Now we are moving into a new era of consciousness that is spirit-centered, where we are here to flower in our consciousness as individuals by following the wisdom of our bodies. Ra-Uru-Hu says, today's manifestors, still the instruments of the yang-yang principle, primal force, are now living in a yin-yin, receptive, generator-dominated environment. Instead of dreaming empires into being or determining the course of civilizations, they are now looking for a way to integrate their inherent independence and unique essential power to impact into a society that has stripped away their freedom to act. In conclusion, the manifestor needed to learn how to live in this new era where they weren't the rulers because people were no longer willing to follow like sheep. The people were tuned in to their own internal wisdom and prioritized listening to their own truth according to their body's consciousness. And the manifestor learned to do the same, and they let go of their anger, and with that they also released their position of power, and then merrily went about their way, peacefully living their life, doing what they liked to do and what they felt inspired to do according to their own truth. Well, that was an interesting story. One of the things that I learned while I was researching for this video, and I'll put all the links below to the sources of where I found all this amazing information. The main source that I'd like to highlight is something called the Manifestor's Manifesto, which is really an incredible PDF for anyone who's a manifestor. I highly recommend that you get that. In that PDF, it's all lectures that Ra gave for manifestors, and one of the things that he talks about is how, the not self themes for all of the other types of, frustration for the generator, bitterness for the projector, and disappointment for the reflector, none of them are really gonna incite fear in another person. No one's gonna be afraid of projector bitterness or really frustration or disappointment. But in the case of anger, manifestor anger can be scary because the logical outcome of it, if you take it to its extreme, is violence. And that's how manifestors were able to wield so much power historically, was through their anger and the fear that resulted in people as a result of being, faced with their anger. But the point that Ra makes in this manifesto is that the time of manifestor not self-anger being an effective tool to wield power is over. And so there's really, in a way, no place for that anger. And so manifestors nowadays really need to learn to work with their anger and not to project it outwards so much, but rather, find a way to play nice, basically, in the playground.
Being a manifestor is not an excuse to be an asshole. I've actually, since discovering that I was a manifestor about 8 or 9 years ago, I've met more manifestors along the way now that I have this structure and this definition of this aura type. And what I keep seeing as a theme is almost like this that bad behavior is justified because I'm a manifestor. And I didn't realize that there was almost something unconscious in me that had that same belief that I had a right to either be pushy, or that I had a right to be aggressive, or that I had a right to discard others quite brutally almost. And from getting to know more manifestors all across the world through various groups that I'm in, there is this underlying theme, I guess, of that being a manifestor gives you that permission somehow. However, that doesn't really, that's not the case. The anger really and the assholeness is actually, it's the not self that's expressing itself through actions and behavior, and that our job as manifestors is to move through that and to understand why that is in the first place, because we are built to be the embodiment of peace. We are built to move in a way that actually creates ripples of peace around us, rather than ripples of frustration and rage and anger that is directed back at us based upon our own aggression that's kind of spurt out into the world. So a part of being a manifestor, this is what my understanding has been, particularly in the last 12 months, is about taking responsibility for your stuff, taking responsibility for your behavior. And that being a manifestor is not an excuse or a reason to be mean, unkind, or cruel.
Manifestor does not give you the license to be an asshole. But it also there's a fine balance. That's what I'm going to say. There's a fine balance. You're not here to be an asshole. You're here to impact. But sometimes people want to put you down. They want to squash you down because you have that kind of energy. And so our job is to not allow them to put us down, but also not to be an asshole about it either. So there's a fine line between the two. And I say that we have to check in and walk that fine line and go, okay, am I being an asshole or am I impacting?
Yeah, I do. I have like an explosive temper, and as you know, I grew older, I tended to kind of turn that anger inward because I knew that I couldn't just throw tantrums all the time. It's not an effective way to live, but neither is turning it toward myself. And so the way generally that I take care of myself so that when I'm feeling angry, I can help it dissolve is either through physical activity. I know that that always helps me. It's like a very vigorous physical activity. It helps, like, I feel like it's like flicking water, like anger water off of me, and then I can kind of like exhale and go on with my day. And if that doesn't work, which it usually does, then I need time to kind of contemplate, you know, what is it, pinpoint exactly what is it that's making me feel this way, and then turn that into, you know, like if it's toward a person, then I need to have a conversation with that person. Or if it's just kind of like word vomit, just saying everything that's on my mind and this is why, those one or both of those two things can help it dissolve instantly and make me feel at peace. And I think, you know, coming to that realization has drastically improved my life and my relationships.
I do not get very angry very much. I don't. But if I am pushed to a wall, then my pushing back is very powerful. Then I really can push somebody down. But I haven't come to that kind of instances. I think maybe at the most 3 or 4 times in my life up to now where I really push back. I don't use the anger that you talked about. Because I know I have it, and because I work on it, so I'm forewarned already, so to speak. I do use it, but it might not be the kind of burst out. But I know that the boundaries are there. I'm very, very clear about my boundaries at the moment. And it is probably the use of my own anger, you know, that I know where the boundaries are. So my boundaries are very, very clear. People know exactly where they come. They have me.
The thing about anger to me, because I have this background of Chinese medicine and shamanism, I always know that anger has a deeper feeling. And so I look at my anger to give me answers. Why did I get angry? What is this anger really about? What's the deeper, more vulnerable feeling going on here? And then part of it too is sometimes anger is about boundaries. When you do your inner work, you understand your anger on such a deep, deep level. And I encourage all manifestors to really do their inner work. So when they do get angry, they don't feel bad for getting angry. They understand their anger.
Give me the big picture. Inform me of what I'm stepping into so that I can prepare. And yeah, it is different. Like, don't just tell me or demand that I do something, but inform me what's happening. It calms my nervous system. It takes me into that place of peace, and it calms it keeps at bay any kind of anger, because I can get angered easily. Actually, I don't know if it's true that I can get angered easily, but yeah, it is true. I know anger well. So
sounds like you feel the anger, but you don't necessarily lash out with it.
no, I mean, sometimes, sure, I lash out. I totally can lash out with it sometimes. But yeah, it's a whole different ball game to walk into a situation or something feeling calm in my system and at peace than anger and irritated by not being informed. And actually it I have to put a lot of energy, like what I would call unnecessary energy, into trying to figure out, because if people aren't informing me, I get really agitated by that.
If you haven't watched the video that I made about how to inform, it's really illuminating and I highly recommend you check it out. I'll link it on this page as well as in the description box below. For manifestors, anger is a chemistry that's a part of their design, and it's, communicating to you. It could be your boundaries, it could also be resistance that you're meeting. And so learning to deal with your anger and to really explore, like, what is it communicating with you, and is there a boundary you need to set, or is there someone you need to inform along the way so that you meet less resistance? Those are questions that are an ongoing exploration. And what I am seeing in these interviews is that people are finding their way with their anger and finding what it's communicating with them, and then learning how to navigate it. So it seems like it's probably a very individual process that you just need to go through as a part of your experiment. But along the way, ideally, you'll find peace as you inform, and that you meet less resistance so that you can really find your path and stay true to yourself.
I would like to die with an inner calm in myself. I would like. But this inner calm, like the example I just told you, even my children say, "Mommy, you are actually a very, very calm person." But it does not mean that I don't stop a person from being a bloody nuisance, or to stop them from bullshitting. I have the tendency to stop people too. I see through people's bullshitting more and more with age, I guess.
You're so funny. You think I'm funny. I think you are hilarious.
I think you're funny. You're actually very, very good in your...
As a manifestor, I have to remember that, if I'm not peaceful, people will feel it. If I am peaceful, people will feel it. That's just kind of my aura type. So if they're bumping against my bubble, they have to feel that peace within the bubble. But peace is just something I'm striving for constantly. How do I find peace? And if I don't feel the peace, it's time for me to go take time out to be by myself. This is a manifestor listening to their energy, because if you aren't peaceful, then it's time for you to go get peaceful. And I think that's the biggest thing, because if you go out there in the world not being peaceful, people are going to feel it. So if you come from a place of peace, then you need to allow, people will have the impact will be greater.
For the last 25 years, my objective has been inner peace, I must say. But it has never been quite so easy, because I have been wanting I have this horrible quality of wanting to save people, and that I need to be very careful about, because not everybody wants to be saved or should be saved. To be in neutrality helps me a lot not to judge people's journey. So I work in knowing what the whole spectrum of myself, and then make a choice whenever I am in a situation. Do I choose from here or do I choose from there? And basically I try to choose closest to my own truth, but my own truth may not be what somebody else wants to hear.
If you're a manifestor, please feel free to comment and share how you have learned to navigate your anger and to move through this world with peace. There are more episodes coming up with the Empowered Manifestor. Stay tuned. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and even consider sharing this video with a manifestor or someone who loves a manifestor. I'm available to connect through my website, karenmcmullen.ca, where I have on offer my readings as well as books, and also through Instagram. So until I see you next time, take care.